look the part, but let's see some of your moves.
Feeling free and it feels so right. Oh, time to do the things I like. Gonna see a princess, everything's alright. Oh, no job but an answer to. Ain't a fixture in the palace zoo. No, and since the carbonites off me, I'm living life now that I'm free. Yeah, time to get myself together. Now I got myself together. Now I made it through the weather. Better days are gonna get better. I'm so happy the carbonite is gone. I'm moving on. I'm so happy that it's over now. The pain is gone. I'm putting on my shades to cover up my eyes. I'm jumping in my ride.
Well, it's another Wednesday night.
Yes, it is indeed.
And you know what that means? It means that the Inflatable Falcon is on, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, kind of. We're half here. Or
Well,
2/3 of the way here.
2/3? I guess 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Isn't that how the story goes?
Something like that, yeah.
And I do apologize for starting a little bit later than normal, but I'm still trying to get used to this whole piloting thing. I'm not good at it yet, and unfortunately, as you can tell, all the viewers and listeners can tell, Mike's not with us tonight, so it's the rookies running the show.
I think this is the 6th week in a row that we've been running on 2/3 as opposed to a full crew.
Yeah, and I was only able to get to listen into to part of the show last week. Heather and I and the oldest dude went out to Chicago for a couple days, and that was quite the adventure. What kind of stuff did I miss?
Honestly, I can't even remember what I did yesterday. So
okay.
I know we had a decently long show. I think we talked about a lot of costuming stuff though.
Okay.
So, my brain's been kind of fried the last few weeks. So asking me to remember something that happened 7 days ago is not great, especially let alone 7 hours ago.
Well, even though our trip wasn't a specific Star Wars related trip, looks like we got a E-girl in the mix. She's saying hello. Nice to have her back on with us. We went to several museums while we were out there, and one of the ones that we visited was the Museum of Science and Industry. And have you been to that museum?
I've never been to Chicago.
Oh, okay. This museum has full-size cars, tractors, planes, trains, and a submarine, like, in the building. It's ridiculous how cool, and this giant model train set. And they also have this one little section it's definitely more kid oriented. It's these little, almost like storefront windows, and inside the storefront are these little scenes, and then outside the storefront is almost like a poem that you read, and then you go back to the storefront and you try to identify the things that they're referencing in the scene. And one of the scenes was set up to be kind of space age themed, and they had Mars bars in a clear globe, and they had Comet candy bars on the wall, and then tucked around the corner was a little, I would say maybe 2 foot tall R2D2 prop.
Nice.
So even though it wasn't a Star Wars themed event or vacation, I still managed to find Star Wars in it anyway. So that was pretty fun.
Always seems to pop up when you least expect it, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of cool.
So, what do you got planned for this evening for us, since you have the pilot's seat?
So consider him on the pilot seat, and I haven't had any to troops to speak of, and I understand that you haven't. And because I was on vacation last week, I didn't really get to spend any time at all building my costume. Did you do any costuming at all?
I forgot. I did get something in the mail today. I
Oh,
finally
okay.
have my new Kylo pants after almost 3 months.
Okay.
So
Are
those
these the
those
lighter
came.
weight ones or another version of the leather ones?
So they're waxed denim,
Okay.
which they have a really awful feeling to them. I hate it's correct. I just hate how they feel.
Oh man.
So, but yeah, so I got those in. So as soon as I get a haircut, get it dyed, and suit up, I'll be ready to submit Supreme Leader Kylo Ren.
Okay.
So, and they're tailored, which is really nice. So I don't have a pair of pants that have this much gap between my hips and the edge of the pants.
And which tailor did you use for those?
Alter Pucci on Etsy. I think that's the store.
Okay.
So yeah, they cost a pretty penny, but they were definitely worth it because, like I said, they're tailored. So
And do they specialize in just 501st things or all Star Wars things or
all costuming things, it seems like. I know they've got a bunch of stuff for like just extra other. Like I know they've got a full Loki from the Avengers set.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
That's pretty cool.
lots of different stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but that is my only costume corner thing that I have this week.
Gotcha. Well, I know in between, my trip out there and our show tonight, I sent a little note to you and Mike thinking about a new segment that we could to add to our show. So we got troop time, which we often do, costume corner, which we're standing in now. This new segment is really just about talking about the things that we've recently acquired to add to our collections, whether it's our collection of tools, our books, or even collectibles. And so recently, when I say recently, just this past weekend near us in this little town called Richland, a vintage store called Shoreline Vintage. Every summer they host. It's almost like a ginormous yard sale, if you will.
Hmm.
And so they invite different sellers to come in and camp out in their in their lawn for the day, and they sell all sorts of stuff, whether it's vintage things like antique butter churns, or things that are right up our alley, Star Wars toys. And one of the things that I picked up while I was there, so they have a storefront on this main street, and then a driveway down the side of the building and a big grassy area in the back. And on the front sidewalk of the store, they had these two little sets of tables that people had set stuff on. And it was when you're walking up to it, it looked like just a gobbledygook random mess of stuff. And I happened to find in that random gobbledygook mess of stuff is a little speeder that came out during the Star Wars Rebels time. This is from the 5 point of articulation figures, and it's the speeder that Ezra Bridger was riding in Rebels, and it's also made an appearance in one of the more recent episodes of a show that was recently launched on Disney Plus, and that was like the fourth thing that we saw on this random table.
Very
I
cool.
also picked up with Heather's nudging these three sets here, and what they are, it's Anakin Skywalker, C3PO, and Aura Singh, and inside these boxes are, hopefully I don't pull the whole thing down. How does this one look? So it's an action figure, a 12-inch action figure. And this set is kind of cool because each figure comes with a book related to that figure. And so it's Anakin Skywalker, but I think it's Bernard Shaw. The
Sebastian Shaw.
Sebastian Shaw, that's what it is. That's his name. Sebastian Shaw, who played uh, Anakin.
Yeah, I always wanted to pick up those three. It was one of those things where like I've seen it a couple times, but never pulled the trigger, and now they're all relatively expensive.
Well, do you want to know how much you paid for these?
$10 a piece.
20.
Man.
I
Yes.
mean, yeah, it was fantastic, and I got some other things there as well, because it just happened to be right place, right time. Um, on the way home after leaving the place, I had, have you ever experienced buyer's remorse,
Mm-hmm.
where you buy something and then later like, oh, I shouldn't have bought that? I was thinking of buyer's remorse from the other side of things, and it's like, I wish I had bought more.
Yeah.
Because there's one gentleman there. I don't know if if he had a store somewhere and just showed up there, or if it was just a person selling his collection or pieces of his collection. He had so many goodies. In fact, I got another. Um, I recently, on the Rambling Star Wars fan, did a episode on cookbooks, Star Wars cookbooks,
Mm-hmm.
and he had one that I didn't have in my collection, so I bought a new Star Wars cookbook, along with, these three figures and that little speeder. So I think, as we go forward, whether it's Mike talking about his Star Wars encyclopedia that he has, or magazines that we pick up along the way, I think it'll be fun to kind of just check in with each other and see what we add to our little Smaug collection. So
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not add anything to the collection this week. But hope I last week technically, I don't know if I didn't talk about it, but Mike sent me the Duel on Mustafar and the Obi-Wan Kenobi Revenge of the Sith pop figures.
okay,
So I don't know if you saw that in our group chat.
I did see the picture. Yeah,
But yeah, so that was so incredibly kind of him to send those over to me. But yeah, I added those to the bookshelf of all of my copies of Revenge of the Sith. So, and it perfectly fits in place of 7 DVD cases. So it's a seamless transition from DVDs to the pop set back to the DVDs.
it's like it was meant to be there to fit into that spot.
Exactly.
That's awesome. And you know, I'm gonna bet money that that Mike knows it's in a good place, in a good home, and it's going to be respected and cared for. And
Oh, it's the centerpiece of my collection now.
yeah, it's not like he's just gifting it to you for you to flip on wherever.
Right.
So when we
So,
were sending notes back and forth about this episode, I had suggested the idea that we talk about criticism, Star Wars criticism, because it seems like with each new show, there's new batches of people who critique or tear down or rip apart whatever Star Wars has to offer, whatever the makers of Star Wars have to offer. And I sometimes get the sense that we're not watching the same shows.
mhm.
That and if we're not watching the same shows, at least we're not watching them from the same perspective. We're not watching them, even in some cases, with the same intentions. And so, would you kind of categorize it as that when you read some of these, whether it's Facebook comments or articles that are posted on various sites?
Truthfully, truthfully, I stopped looking into it and looking for critiques and criticism. I'll watch the breakdown videos, and there are a couple reviewers that I'll watch because I know their reviews are pretty unbiased. But I've had a few conversations with a few different people where some of their criticisms are valid, some are not so much. But it's gotten to a point where at least to me personally, things have gotten so toxic that it's not even worth talking about with other people anymore. Just because you never know, you could say one thing that just sets off a chain reaction for somebody.
Oh goodness, yeah. I mean, I've experienced that, in a store. And so Heather and I had gone out one night, and we were, checking out various toy sections of different stores, and I'm standing there in front of the Star Wars stuff like I commonly do. And one of the employees came up, and I was wearing a Star Wars T-shirt like I commonly do when I'm not at work. And the guy's like, "Oh, you like Star Wars, huh?" Yeah, a little bit, and just kept looking at what I was like. He's like, "Did you watch any of the sequel movies?" I said, "Yeah." It's like, "Yeah, I felt like J.J. Abrams punched me in the balls." Like, what?
That's an interesting take.
And then proceeded to go on at least a 6 or 7 minute rant about how Star Wars has become awful ever since it was purchased by Disney. And at one point, Heather just kind of grabbed onto the sleeve of my shirt and says, "Oh, we got to go check on this thing." And this guy just kept going.
Yeah, I had this conversation last night with a friend of mine. And I wish everyone subscribed to this line of thinking, where you can have your criticisms, you can have things you don't like. However, in my opinion, and I know I've said this word for word on the show before, all Star Wars is good Star Wars. Be grateful that we have anything. So, and what I said was, if it wasn't for Disney, if it wasn't for Kathleen Kennedy, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, we would still probably only have 6 movies, one TV show, and a bunch of weird books with a really messed up canon.
Yeah.
So,
And you also miss a couple of the silly cartoon shows that we had, and the
right,
and the two made for television movies. That's what we would have. We wouldn't have what we are currently surrounded by, whether it's the High Republic books or the latest um, streams of comics, or even the live action TV shows that we have out now.
right. Yeah, and like I have critiques of what they've put out, and I'm sure you and I will discuss that in private. And but there's no reason to be so vocal and so public about it, because again, at the end of the day, be grateful that we're getting anything, and there's not these 10-year gaps and 20-year gaps between content.
Yeah, in some cases we're not even waiting 10 months.
Right,
You know what I mean? I mean, how long was it from the end of season 3 of The Mandalorian until Ahsoka?
right.
You know?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, not to mention, like, there are some points in time where we're not even waiting 10 weeks.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
true.
yeah, it's just frustrating because if you don't like it, don't watch it. So it's not that hard, and I understand there are people who are like, well, this is my childhood, and I don't appreciate them, stepping on things that I appreciate. It's like, well, it's not made with just you in mind. You know,
Yeah.
these people have a creative process that they stick to, and they're making these for the general audience, not specifically for you, not the people that subscribe to your line of thinking.
Yeah, I
So
think that brings up one of the things I think sometimes gets missed, and that is new Star Wars doesn't erase old Star Wars. So if let's say you were born in 1977, or even, earlier than that, and grew up with all of the Star Wars stuff, all of that Star Wars stuff still exists in its various forms, so you can watch it today and enjoy it as much as you did as a child if you choose to. And if that's the only Star Wars you watch, then okay. But whatever the new thing is, whether you're talking about the High Republic or you're talking about the new live action shows, it doesn't erase any of those other things at all.
yeah, it's like I said, it's just frustrating because there is so much content out there that you don't have to watch, or you don't have to read, or you don't have to play the games that you don't like. There is enough for everybody.
Yeah, and then the other piece with that, so let's pretend that you don't like Star Wars Clone Wars, the animated show. You don't like it. Okay, that's fine. And let's pretend I do. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean I have to not like it, and just because I like it doesn't mean that you have to like it. So our differences of opinion can exist, and we can, carry on conversations about what we like or what we don't like, but we don't necessarily have to attempt to convert the other person to their side of things.
Right. And there's a YouTube channel, I don't know if you've heard of him, called the Cosmonaut Variety Hour.
No, I haven't heard that one yet.
He reviews movies, does TV shows. He's got a very he's a contrarian. He'll tell
Okay.
you himself. He doesn't like a lot of things that the general public doesn't like. And the one thing, because I was just going back and rewatching all of his Star Wars reviews, and in his review of the Rise of Skywalker, he said something that really stuck with me. He didn't like the Rise of Skywalker. Um, However, the sequel trilogy was very reactionary. The Force Awakens was a reaction to the prequels because at the time most people didn't like the prequels. The Last Jedi was a reaction to The Force Awakens. Ryan Johnson wanted to try something different, not so safe. Obviously, not a lot of people liked it. And then The Rise of Skywalker was a reaction to the backlash from The Last Jedi. So, this sort of the main criticism of The Rise of Skywalker is that a lot happens and it moves so fast because they're trying to do all of these different things and they didn't have a concise story. And it's one of the few criticisms of The Rise of Skywalker that I will agree with. They had a lot going on. I still like the movie, don't get me wrong. However, that's what you get when, you quote unquote start listening to the fans. Is you get all of these things and then it just becomes a jumbled mess, and it feels like it's written by 500 different people. The Rise of Skywalker feels like it was written by Reddit. I like the movie, but it feels like it's a mess. They feel like they were trying to do too much. So that's why when a lot of people are saying like, "Oh, I could write this so much better," it's like we see what happens when they when they listen to some of these people. So you didn't like that Rey was a nobody, so they made her a Palpatine. You didn't like that Snoke didn't mean anything, so they made it that Palpatine came back. So it's one of those things where it's like, just let them take the reins. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I feel like it's that simple.
Yeah, I'm with you on that part. If you don't like it, don't watch. I mean, there's a lot of entertainment out there that I hear people talking about that I'm not interested in watching in the slightest. And I don't I don't spend my time discounting the people who like it, or harassing the makers of it, or insulting the actors and actresses in it. I choose to not engage in it at all.
Hmm.
Whether it's a reality TV show that I think is, in my head, I think is kind of silly, or it's a specific movie that people have watched that I haven't watched. Just I move along. Like
And you don't even have to take it so far as other sources of entertainment like books. All of the Star Wars books that are out now. I don't like reading. It's a medium that I don't enjoy. So I don't read them. I don't know what's going on in the books. I can't say I dislike them.
yeah.
So
And so
it's
do you insult the bookworm nerds who
oh
do
yeah,
read them?
absolutely. The High Republic is the worst thing ever published. So for our audio listeners, I rolled my eyes and that was sarcasm. I don't care.
Because I think there's with any entertainment, or all entertainment for that matter, there's room for everyone. And once again, just because person A likes it and person B doesn't like it doesn't mean that they have to work to convert each other. Or what I think sometimes is even worse, where they get into these battles of who is righter, the person who does like it or the person in this case, it's not about who's right. There's no right, there's no wrong. So this it's a there's no opportunity in that discussion for a winner to emerge.
Right. Entertainment is subjective. It's always been subjective. Move on with your life. Stop blowing up people's comment sections because you didn't like something. You, and you know, do we have to go so far as to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all? I mean, this concept is just so foreign to people.
Yeah, which I do find interesting. With that in mind, so there are folks who will say, "I haven't watched it and I don't like it," and I'm like, you're going out of your way to put a comment on this thread of comments related to this form of entertainment, claiming that you haven't watched it and it's bad. Like, there's a whole lot of wasted energy there.
Yeah, we don't have time to unpack all that, as John Mulaney would say.
I mean, I actually had an ex coworker who, as surprising as this sounds, I would often get into conversations about Star Wars. And when that person overheard any conversation about Star Wars, they would almost every time insert themselves into the conversation with something to the effect of, "Can you believe I've never seen a Star Wars?" Like, I was expecting them to put on like a ribbon of achievement
Mhm.
or something along those lines. So if that's the case, how about you just let this conversation be this conversation and not necessarily have to step in, and because you're not adding anything to it. You're
Right. And, an example of me personally that is outside of the realm of Star Wars is my opinion is I think Forrest Gump is one of the worst films ever created. I cannot stand the movie. However, you don't see me going into Forrest Gump fan groups and blasting the movie into eternity.
Yeah. Or what often happens is people will blast the makers of it, or they'll blast the creators, the actors and actresses in it, which I find really weird and unfortunate.
Yeah, like, occasionally I see the cause, and I see the reasoning to criticize the makers. However, when it comes to actors and actresses, you shouldn't really blame them because they did the job that they were asked to do. For example, Hayden Christensen in the prequel trilogy, Jake Lloyd, Ahmed Best. I, they were given lines, they were given direction. It's not on them. They didn't write it.
Yeah.
They didn't. They did what they were told to do. And if you don't like it, don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing any of those three. I love Jar Jar, and I love Hayden and Jake Lloyd as Anakin. Let's clear the record
Yeah.
first. So, but if you're gonna lobby any complaints with that, that's on Lucas. That's on George for how it was written and how it was directed. So even what's her name, the girl who played Rose in The Last Jedi.
Kelly Marie Tran.
That's it. People were furious about her character in The Last Jedi. Again, did she write The Last Jedi? Did she produce any of the film other than what she was asked to do on screen? No. There's no reason to go after her.
Yeah, and the other
her performance
along those similar lines is when we're sitting in the theater, or nowadays when we can, stream it wherever we are, we're watching a product that has been finalized. It's been approved, it's been distributed. Outside of the original trilogy, where George had the ability to go back and make the special editions, which also ruffled feathers. But for the most part, what we're given is the final project, or the final product, rather. So it went through all sorts of different approval steps along the way, and this is the the version that they chose to share. This is the version that they chose to put out there for our consumption, our participation, or whatever. Um, and us sitting in the seats saying, "I wish they did this" or "wish they did that," isn't going to change that final product.
Hmm.
And whatever wishes we have don't change what the makers intended or what the makers produced for us.
Right. Again, I still think blaming the actors and actresses is like yelling at the fry cook at a Wendy's because they don't have anything on the menu that you like.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or even worse, you're blaming the fry cook for the price of the fries.
right. It's just like when I worked in a movie theater. People complained about the price of popcorn or the price of tickets. It's like, well, take it up with the person who did it. Why is this my problem?
Yeah.
So they people who have an issue will blame anyone they can. So
One of the other things I think more recently that people are forgetting is the magic of what we're really witnessing. I mean, take Avengers Endgame or any of the more recent big blockbuster movies, and to actually acknowledge what you're seeing, whether you're talking about a giant monster or you're talking about a spaceship or you're talking about 65 different alien creatures on the screen, the amount of effort and energy that went into making them appear there and appear as real as they do. I mean, in the olden days, you would sometimes see the strings from the spaceships, or you would see the silhouette where they tried to composite out or blue screen out or whatever, and do all that kind of stuff. Now we watch these things, and you could swear that you could reach in and touch every single thing that's on the screen for the most part. Like there's a magic there that I think sometimes gets overlooked, in the volume of the criticism or whatever it is that they're watching.
yeah, I don't think people understand that we are in the platinum age of visual effects and just filmmaking in general. It has never been this good. So, I don't know. I'm getting heated even just talking about it because it drives me nuts that people will just complain about anything. You put any product in front of you, you could make something specifically for one person and they'll still find a problem with it.
Yeah, why did you make this just for me? How come you didn't make it for my neighbor?
It's I saw something on Facebook. It was a guy worked at a Subway and made a sandwich for a guy. As I'm sure you know how Subway works. And he comes back up after eating half the sandwich. He's like, "This tastes terrible." It's like, "Why'd you make it that way then? You made the sandwich."
Yeah,
So
you selected all these ingredients.
right.
Yeah. You're the one that wanted jelly on your turkey and wheat. That's what you asked for.
People will find anything they can to complain about. And I understand, like we're talking about something that is so first world, but it's
Yeah.
still irritating.
See, and that brings up another thing is, you know, the volume and the intensity of the criticism of of something that at its core is meant to be entertaining is in many ways ridiculous. I mean, with the things that are truly going on outside of a theater or outside of your living room or outside of the device that you're watching, this is what is you're choosing to raise your voice about, or to be upset about. Whether we're talking war, famine, disease, pop, whatever, like all of these other things that are going on right now in this moment, you're gonna
There
invest. You're
there are
gonna
more
invest
pressing
time.
matters on our doorstep.
Yes.
So
Than you being upset about the choice of costume for this one character or whatever.
right. Yeah. I think that there are some people who are just never satisfied, and it's sad because again, like I said, we could be getting nothing. There could be. We're coming up on the 10th, what? No, 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith. We're coming up on a potential of 20 years with no new Star Wars.
Yeah.
So, and yet we've gotten what, 7 or 8 different, or no, 5 live action shows, a handful of animated shows, 5 new movies with 3 more on the way, 5 video games, dozens of books and comic books. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And there's still more, beyond the movies, there's still more live action shows on the horizon.
Right.
We're in the midst of one now that's just started, just released its 3rd episode, but there's another show on the horizon after that.
Oh, it's so exhausting being in this community sometimes. And I'm also a big wrestling fan, and there was someone who put in one of our groups that was being a wrestling fan and a Star Wars fan right now it's more interesting reading comment sections than watching the product. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, some of the drama in our space is entertaining, but we wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for what is on the screen.
Yeah.
Be grateful.
Yeah, and that's the other funny part about it is you're complaining about something that's being gifted to you.
Right.
You're being gifted all of these things, and instead of just saying thanks or no thanks, it's volumes. And I mean, there was, I think I mentioned this before. Somebody wrote an entire book criticizing one of the Star Wars movies, and then like they dedicated that much time that they wrote and had published an entire book criticizing one film.
It's the energy some people are willing to expend is amazing.
It is kind of wacky that way, and I'm glad that even when we do criticize it, because that I don't like everything that there is about Star Wars. There are some things that I scratch my head about and say, why did they make that decision? And those aren't the things that I focus my attention on. I may mention it from time to time. Like, I don't know if I've ever said it publicly, but I wasn't a fan of the smooch between Rey and Kylo in Rise of Skywalker.
Oh God! All right. Oh wow! It's been 40 minutes. God. Sorry, Ken. I got other things to do. Yeah. No,
But it doesn't get my attention, and we don't spend an hour talking about Ken's dislike of the smooch.
You're not going to take to Facebook and just start ripping on J.J. Abrams for?
Well, I'd probably rip on Daisy Ridley, because she with all of her credentials, that's what she chose to do. She chose to be involved.
She agreed to do it.
Yeah, she sold her soul to be in Star Wars, to have it go out like that. Adam Driver, all that acting ability down the toilet, because
it's funny. We're saying all of this in jest. However, I guarantee you there are some people who are genuinely mad right now about that.
Goodness, yeah.
So they probably, some of them probably think the same way that you're joking about, like, oh, it's Daisy Ridley's fault. It shouldn't be this taxing to be a fan right now, but it is, and that's the sad part.
Because there are times that I think you kind of brought it up. Sometimes you have to worry about where you're going in the conversation. Like, do I avoid this conversation altogether, or do I invest the time avoiding the landmines? Like I know this person has this beef, so I don't want to bring it up, because if I open up that can of worms, we're going to be here for 40 minutes, with them just going on a rant about X, Y, or Z.
Right. And it's like sports at this point almost, where it's like, if I'm a fan of this team and you're a fan of our rival, it's just going to be, it's no longer we're a fan of the sport. We're just a fan of the team. And that's kind of where I feel like we're going.
Or in some cases even gets, more singular than that. I'm a fan of this member of this team. And this team would be nothing without this guy, this gal, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that we've managed to, in this giant galaxy of possible Star Wars fans, to have the three of our orbits, align in such a way that we can get together, once a week for over a year to share our joy, to share our love, to share our desire to keep this thing going. Because in some ways, the fact that the franchise is still alive is because of folks like the three of us. We appreciate it. We go to it. We patronage it, or patron it, or
We
support
in
it. Yeah. We buy the stuff. We watch the things. We go to the shows, because we know that more is more, and we like the more that we're getting.
I don't know how much longer I can do this, Ken. My blood's hot.
Well, considering that we're down a crew member, and so that means it's just 2/3 of us. I say we close up shop of this flight, knowing that you and I, even though we don't have the same exact opinion on everything, that at least we agree that sometimes the critics and the quote unquote fans, they sometimes miss what's in front of them, and it turns into not so fun exchanges, or not so fun seas or threads of comments. And I'm thankful for the positivity that you bring. I'm thankful to the different views that you bring, and I'm just so glad that the three of us can get together and week after week after week talk about this franchise and all of the joy that it brings to us, and the joy that we attempt to bring to others with it.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
So with that in mind, I'm going to get ready to cue up Mike's fancy outro music. And if things go well, the three of us will be back together next Wednesday for another flight of the Inflatable Falcon.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. May the Force be with you.
Starships, but then my Falcon's hyperdrive just slipped. I used to worry about the future, but then I threw my caution to the wind. I had no reason to be carefree, no, until I took a trip to the treetop side of town. Yeah. You know, I heard that wicked rhythm. Hey, I had no choice but to get down.